making this video in response to the Adam Lanza incident in Connecticut. Uh, there's a lot of talk on gun control. Everybody's trying to figure out the problem and what happened. And so I'm gonna, and everybody's saying that Asperger's is not a cause to this. So I'm gonna say something that's pretty unpopular, but it needs to be said because there's a need. There's a real need in our schools for a certain kind of education. And it all pretty much boils down to one thing, and that's this. Social skills. Now, a lot of people might look at that and say, well, what's the big deal? That ain't got nothing to do with any of this. Well, it kind of does. Imagine you go out into the world, and I'm not excusing anybody, or I'm not excusing anything that happened. This is a very sad tragedy, the thing that happened. But I'm going to say something that a lot of people's not saying, and it's a very real thing. But imagine you go out into the world and you have enemies on all sides. Imagine being an alien in your world, the way you think, the way you're doing things, and it's not that you're hurting anybody or you're going out to hurt anybody, but still everybody around you hates you because, and it's not that you're not nice. You could be like hello and friendly. It's nothing to do with any of that. But here's pretty much how it is. Okay, when you think with the left side of your brain, it's more logical. Your brain's working in more of a logical way. Well, that's not how people usually work. That's how people like to pretend that they work, but they really don't work that way. They work more of an emotional way. Regular people, or neurotypicals, as Aspies call them, when they go out into the world, they work in more of an animalistic kind of way. And I know you could look at say what happens, say, well, that's pretty animalistic, but on a day-to-day basis, neurotypicals really work in more of an alpha male, beta, 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 and alpha male hierarchy. That's how it really works. It's not about being nice or being friendly. It doesn't work nothing like that. Well, certain students in school, like one student might be able to sit and look at calculus and might be able to figure it out just like that because his brain's wired that way. Whereas other children and other people, they know how to, their brains are more wired for social dynamics. Well, 95% of students in high school that use are going to learn calculus, and then they're going to go out in the world and they're never going to use it. But what's a skill that you learn, that you use every day, and that you actually it's a necessity, but there's no education taught on it in schools. And a lot of people say, well, why do you need to? That'd be a waste of time learning social skills at school. No, it's not. And you need to learn, for Aspies, you got to learn social skills in a way that's and I read some places where the girl said that, or where the mom had fought with the school about certain things with the kid. Well, there needs to be a program in schools for certain kids, and there are in some schools, but there needs to be a program, but I don't think there was in this school. There needs to be a program in some of these schools for Aspie kids. And they say that Asperger's had nothing to do with it. Well, there were several causes that caused this to happen, but I think our Asperger's was a key one because of this one thing. Though it might not have triggered it, the world around this guy, when he went out into the world, he saw enemies everywhere, and he didn't do anything to those people to be their enemy. You know what I mean? So imagine you're living in a world where you're trying to be friendly, you're trying to be nice, but just because of the way you stand, or just because of the way you say hi, or the fact that you don't say hi, Uh, you're being spat on, you're being bullied, you're being pushed into lockers, and this is what it really is. And a lot of people say, well, they brought it on themselves. No, they didn't. Their mind just don't work the way yours does. And like I say, I'm not excusing anything that happened. It's a very sad tragedy. But I hear a lot of stuff on the news right now that it's just not being. Everybody's talking about everything but the problem. And the problem is, when Adam Lanza went out into the world, not only do you need to be taught to say hello or to move your eyes, you need to be taught that when you got your eyes wide open, that gives people a bad feeling. There needs to be a class where the neurotypical mind is talked about, psychology is talked about a little bit. There needs to be a class that not only for certain students that not only when you say hello, but to lean back when you say hello and to hold your eyes kind of sleepy looking. And this sounds detailed and it sounds weird, but this is the truth. This is the honest truth, and I'm telling the truth as I see it. And this really is the way it is. A lot of neurotypicals out there, or normal people, are going to look at this and they're going to say, well, this guy's crazy. This don't make any sense. Well, there's a lot of Aspies on the other end are going to say this makes perfect sense. And a lot of people in the autistic community are going to say this makes perfect sense. And I don't know why somebody hasn't stood up and said this yet. If you see these students, and in class there is, and a lot of other students could use it too, the ones that are being abused at home and stuff, and it's a real need. This is a real necessity that's being overlooked and it's not being taught. You need to there needs to be a curriculum in school that teaches social skills and needs to teach them in a very detailed way. And it needs to be taught the truth. The psychological truth needs to be taught, not the fantasy that, oh well, if you're good, if you respect people, they'll respect you. That's not it. You need the Aspie mind, the guy with the Aspie mind or the girl with the Aspie mind needs to be taught that, okay, if you stand this way, this is the effect that it has on the neurotypical mind. Just like a lot of people, they say they saw this guy's picture and it seemed emotionless and this, that, and the other. Well, in y'all's natural minds, you naturally know how to stand, know how to interact. You know what I mean? This guy's not even thinking that. He don't have that part of the brain. His brain is more logical, okay? Kind of like Spock, kind of like a robot, I guess. But on the inside, his emotions are deep. His emotions are big and deep. Well, in a neurotypical mind, you're say this is logic and this is emotion. This is the top of your brain. Well, underneath that, your logic runs across, and then your emotions are over here. But you're logically controlling your emotions because you're used to it. Well, with somebody like him, he's going out in the world looking for logic, and we don't live in a logical world. We live in an emotionally run world. We live in an animalistic world in a subconscious way. We try to pretend that we're logical, but we're not. And this is the truth, and it's not going to be liked, but nobody's saying it. And the only reason I'm saying it is because there is a need for this in schools. There is a real need for this in schools. And if you start teaching this in schools, the guy with the Aspie mind, the girl with the Aspie mind, needs to be taught how to maneuver through the social game using real social dynamics in a very detailed way. Like I said, he needs to know when you say hello, you can't just come up and just like this, hello. You see, he needs to be taught that you need to pay attention to your eyes. You need to pay attention to the tone of your voice, because if you talk in monotone, a monotone voice has an ill effect on the psychology of the neurotypical mind. But if you say, hey, how you doing? If you talk in waves, it in the neurotypical mind, it gives a good inviting feeling, and they need to be taught that on that level. And these are my thoughts, and nobody else is saying it, so I'm going to say it, and every Aspie out there knows. But when you become isolated like that, and your attackers are on all sides, and this is for anybody, Aspie and neurotypical, imagine a world where you live at, where you're isolated, you're attacked on all sides, and you're not even trying to be. It just, that is the way it is for you. Not only that, but at home, I mean, there was several psychological factors to go along with what happened. I mean, at home, the mother was a gun enthusiast and a prepper, which those If you think about it, I mean, there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of things that she might, would lead the mind to think that there's a lot of people out like that. But that shows signs of a domineering mind, a domineering mother, especially him with a handicap. She probably felt protective of him, but her protection probably stripped him of his rite of passage into manhood. A lot of people get frustrated because they don't understand the disease. But as a man, when you grow up in America, we don't have a rite of passage anymore for men. And and when you take that right, in every culture, there's a rite of passage for a boy to becoming a man. Well, that's an important psychological thing, and we've gotten away from a lot of things that we don't see necessary anymore. But we're starting to see the psychology of it in America happening. Uh, a lot of mothers are raising boys anymore into men, and they don't really have the tools. They don't really know what it is to be a man, and there needs to be curriculum for that, and there is curriculum for that. It's just in odd places. Real social dynamics. But I'm gonna say it. Every school needs to have an expert. Every district should have an expert. There's also there is psychology uh, clinics for every school, attached to every school in the United States. But in those psychology clinics, there needs to be people studying up. I went to try to get a diagnosis for Asperger's, and they looked at a book and said I was this, and then I got home and I researched what they said I was, and I wasn't nothing like that. I was nothing like that, and it just showed me that and the Asperger's is 1 out of every 150. Autism is a growing thing, and it needs to be studied upon. If you're a psychologist, you need to know there needs to be, with every school district that has a psychological clinic attached to it, there needs to be somebody in there that's looking for Asperger's, that knows how to teach these things, and there needs to be a real curriculum for those students, and not only for those students, but maybe for some that you can tell their social skills are a little off, and it needs to be made cool. It needs to be a class where it's cool. It's not and people don't need to be ridiculed for it. And teachers, and I found this growing up, a lot of times even the adults are just animals. I mean, they act like animals. They lack understanding. They don't have any real understanding, and you know, and they don't care. So not excusing anything the guy did. He's very he became stripped. He became stripped of everything, and he snapped. I mean, he just snapped. He couldn't deal with it. And the games probably didn't help, because when your focus gets there, they probably didn't help. Video games probably didn't help, but those two wasn't just the only factors. It was probably a lot of factors, and finally he just snapped. But real social dynamics. There needs to be a curriculum for real social dynamics. Nobody's talking about it. Aspies are going to know, and all those Aspies that deny that this guy might have Asperger's syndrome, stop doing that. You know what I mean? This is a real problem. It's a real problem that needs to be addressed. It's not been addressed. And they're talking about gun control and stuff like that now. Well, that's all well and good, however you want to do it. But me as a person, if I wanted to go out and get a gun, that's not going to stop me. You know what I mean? It's just not going to stop me. But which I wouldn't never do nothing like that anyway. But what about the next people? Just like the guys in Columbine, they were nerds. Well, they didn't know how to maneuver through the social game. And if you're teaching real social dynamics in school and you make it a cool class, and as the class goes on, these kids are going to know how to maneuver through the social game, and they're going to become attractive students. And they're not going to have those problems. Their minds are going to be set at ease. And the problems that most kids don't have to deal with, most kids do have to deal with them, but they already have the tools. Imagine having to deal with all those problems, but you didn't have the tools. They need to be taught real tools to learn how to maneuver through the social game. And when they do, they're going to become attractive students. They're going to make friends. You know what I mean? And they're not going to be trapped in a world of isolation where they're getting kicked in the face every day. And like I said, anybody, neurotypical or Aspie, imagine that. Imagine every day you're getting kicked in the face. Every day. And you're not trying to. You know what I mean? So, that's my thoughts. Please take a real look at it. And we'll talk to y'all later. And that's all I got to say.